June 6, 1944. The forest was a tapestry of shadows and mist, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and cordite. Sergeant Miles Turner of the 101st Airborne moved cautiously, his boots making no sound on the thick carpet of pine needles. His unit was lost, separated from the main force during the chaotic night drop. They were 7 men, deep behind enemy lines, with only a vague idea of where they were. The mission to secure a crossroads had failed. Now, the mission was simply to survive. A low whine cut through the silence. Turner froze, his hand going up. The men behind him dropped into a crouch, weapons scanning the grey gloom. The sound came again, a pained animal sound. Behind a fallen log they found the source. A German shepherd, its fur matted with blood and mud, lay panting, a deep gash across its flank. It looked at them with intelligent, fearful eyes. But it did not growl. It was wearing a battered leather collar, but no military harness. Just a dog, Private Jenkins muttered, lowering his rifle. "Leave it." But the dog whined again, a desperate, pleading sound. It tried to stand, failed, and then fixed its gaze on Turner. It let out a short, sharp bark, then looked deeper into the forest, then back at Turner. "It's trying to tell us something," Corporal Dixon said, his voice low. Turner knelt. The dog licked his hand, a gesture of utter submission and trust. This was no trained attack dog. This was someone's pet, a lost soul in a world of giants and gunfire. He gave it a piece of hardtack from his ration pack. The dog swallowed it and immediately tried to stand again, its eyes locked on the trees. "All right, boy," Turner whispered. "Show us." With immense effort, the dog rose and began to limp into the forest, stopping every few feet to look back and ensure they were following. It led them away from the known paths, into a part of the woods so dense and tangled it felt primordial. The psychological tension was immense. They were placing their trust, their very lives, in the instincts of a wounded animal. After nearly an hour, the dog stopped at the base of a rocky outcrop, overgrown with ivy and thorny bushes. It scratched at the earth, whining incessantly. Then it lay down, its energy spent, its job done. Turner signaled his men to investigate. They pulled aside the vegetation, revealing not rock but rusted iron. A door, cleverly disguised to look like part of the hillside. It was an abandoned bunker, from an older war, perhaps, but the lock was new, shiny and well-oiled. Using a crowbar from their demo kit, they pried the door open. The smell that wafted out was not of damp and decay, it was of ozone, engine oil, and something else, something coppery and old. The dog, from outside, let out a low growl. Turner shone his flashlight inside. It was not a storage bunker. It was a tunnel entrance, a perfectly cylindrical shaft, lined with modern concrete, descending into the earth at a steep angle. Faint, overhead lights illuminated its length, disappearing into the deep darkness, and from the depths they could hear a faint, mechanical hum, and voices, German voices. This was not an abandoned relic, this was active, a secret escape route, or an invasion route. The dog had not led them to safety, it had led them to the heart of the enemy's secret. Suddenly, from deep within the tunnel, a new sound echoed. Not German, it was a voice screaming in English. "Get back! The lights! The lights in the walls!" Then a burst of static, and a single, clear sentence that froze the blood in their veins. "The dogs! They're not dogs, don't trust the—" The transmission cut off, the hum from the tunnel intensified. Turner looked back at the German shepherd. It was staring into the tunnel, its ears flat against its head, a low, continuous growl rumbling in its chest. It was not afraid of the Germans. It was afraid of what was in the dark with them, the missing unit, the unanswered mystery of the lost paratroopers. The eerie wartime event was unfolding right in front of them. They had found a secret Nazi tunnel, and the dog, their unlikely guide, had just led them into a nightmare. June 6, 1944. The air in the forest was cold and still. Sergeant Miles Turner and his men stood at the mouth of the tunnel, a dark wound in the earth. The wounded German shepherd lay at their feet, its whines now soft, pained things. The voice they had heard, that terrified English voice screaming about the lights and the dogs, echoed in their minds. It was a ghost, a warning from the darkness. Private Jenkins shifted his weight, his rifle pointed down the concrete shaft. "What now, Sarge? We can't just go in there." The dog lifted its head, ears twitching. It let out another low growl, this one directed not down the tunnel, but back the way they had come. Turner followed its gaze. Nothing but trees and mist, but the dog sensed something they could not see. "Jenkins, Dixon with me," Turner said, his voice a low whisper. "The rest of you, secure the entrance. If we're not back in 2 hours, or if you hear shooting, you seal this door and get to the rally point. That's an order." He knelt beside the dog, stroking its head. "You stay here, boy, you've done enough." The animal licked his hand once, then laid its head down with a tired sigh. With a deep breath, Turner led the way into the tunnel. The air changed instantly. It was cooler, drier, and carried that same metallic, coppery scent, stronger now. The hum was a physical vibration in the concrete floor. The lights, set at intervals in the ceiling, cast a sickly yellow glow. They moved in silence, their footsteps absorbed by the strange acoustics of the place. The tunnel was not straight. It curved gently, sloping ever downward. After 50 yards, they found the first evidence of the previous team. A single, spent, .45 caliber cartridge lay on the floor. American. Then they saw the writing. Scrawled on the wall in what looked like charcoal was a single word: loop. Further on, another: echo. The psychological tension was a wire tightening around Turner's chest. This was not just an escape tunnel. This was a maze. A trap. The tunnel branched. To the left, the hum was louder. To the right, silence. The dog, back at the entrance, had been afraid of the hum. "Left," Turner whispered. They took the left branch. The hum grew until it was a dull roar in their ears. The tunnel opened into a large, circular chamber. And in the center of that chamber was a machine. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. A complex array of spinning metal rings and glowing vacuum tubes, all centered around a large glass cylinder that pulsed with a faint green light. It was the source of the hum, and it was not German. Stamped on its base was the same symbol they had seen in other classified briefings, a circle bisected by 3 jagged cracks. The Avalon Group, but it was what was around the machine that made them freeze. Dozens of German soldiers stood at attention, their backs to them, perfectly still. They were guarding the device. Turner raised his rifle, aiming at the nearest soldier's back. He expected a shout, a shot, anything. Nothing. The soldiers did not move. Cautiously, Dixon approached the nearest one. He reached out and tapped the soldier on the shoulder. The soldier crumpled, not like a man falling, like a sack of empty clothing. His uniform collapsed to the floor with a rustle of cloth and a clatter of equipment. There was no one inside. Jenkins let out a strangled gasp. Turner shone his light on the pile. The uniform was real. The helmet was real. The rifle was real. But the man was gone, vanished. They checked another soldier. The same, just an empty uniform, standing upright as if held by invisible wires. "There. Echoes," Dixon whispered, his face pale. "That transmission," he said, "echo." The unanswered mystery deepened into sheer, undiluted horror. The Avalon machine wasn't just a weapon, it was a recorder. It was playing back a recording of a German guard unit, a phantom garrison for a phantom tunnel. A sound from the tunnel behind them made them spin around, a scraping, shuffling sound, and a low, guttural growl. Turner shone his light back the way they had come. Standing in the entrance to the chamber was the German shepherd. Its wound was gone. Its fur was clean. Its eyes glowed with the same sickly green light as the machine's core. And it was not alone. Behind it were other dogs, Dobermans, shepherds, all of them emitting the same low growl, all their eyes burning with that same unnatural light. "The dogs! They're not dogs!" The warning from the transmission finally made sense. The lead dog, the one they had rescued, the one they had trusted, took a step forward. It bared its teeth, but it did not snarl. It spoke. A single, distorted word that grated from a throat not meant for human speech. Leave. June 6th, 1944. The word hung in the humming air of the chamber, a grotesque sound from a corrupted throat. Leave. The German shepherd that had led them here now stood transformed, its eyes burning with alien green light. Behind it, the other dogs advanced, a silent, growling phalanx. Their forms seemed to flicker at the edges, as if not entirely solid. Sergeant Turner raised his Thompson, but his finger hesitated on the trigger. This was the animal he had saved, the one that had licked his hand. "Steady," he commanded his men, his voice tight. He kept his weapon aimed but did not fire. "It's not the dog. It's the machine." He looked past the canine guardians to the pulsating Avalon device. The spinning rings and glowing tubes seemed to pulse in time with the dog's low growls. This was the source. This was what had stolen the German soldiers, leaving only hollow uniforms. This was what had corrupted the animals. The lead dog took another step forward. "You are an echo." The words were distorted, pieced together like a poorly tuned radio. "You disrupt the pattern." Dixon backed toward the machine, his rifle trained on the dogs. "Sarge, what pattern? What is this thing doing?" Turner's mind raced, connecting the horrors. The empty uniforms, standing guard. The recorded voices in the tunnel. The dogs, somehow made into speakers for this intelligence. This wasn't just a recording. It was a preservation, a loop of time, a moment captured and endlessly repeated. The Avalon group was experimenting with temporal stasis. They were trying to freeze a piece of the war, to study it, to use it. And they were using living creatures as components in their machine. "The pattern is this moment," Turner realized aloud, his voice filled with revulsion. "This guard post, this patrol, they've frozen it in time. The soldiers are gone, but the event remains. And the dogs? They're part of the event. They've been wired into the system." The lead dog snarled, a sharp electronic edge to the sound. "The unit must be complete." It looked past them, at the empty uniforms. "The variables must be eliminated." The other dogs began to fan out, moving with an unnerving, synchronized purpose. They were not just guarding the machine, they were enforcing the timeline. They saw Turner and his men as intruders, as errors in the recorded event. They were going to correct the error by eliminating them. "Fall back to the tunnel," Turner yelled. They turned and ran, firing bursts behind them as they retreated. The bullets did not tear through flesh. They passed through the dogs as if through smoke. But the creatures flickered violently with each impact, their forms destabilizing for a second before reforming. They were projections, solid light, or solid time. The dogs gave chase, their silent, glowing-eyed pursuit more terrifying than any sound. Turner and his men sprinted back down the curved tunnel, past the scrawled words, "loop" and "echo." The warnings now made terrible sense. They burst out of the tunnel entrance, into the grey daylight. The rest of the squad was there, weapons raised. "Seal it!" Turner shouted. "Now!" As his men struggled to heave the heavy iron door shut, Turner looked back into the tunnel. The pack of glowing dogs was almost upon them, and at the rear of the pack was the shepherd. For a fleeting second, as the door slammed shut, its eyes met his. The green light faded, and in that final moment, he saw the original, frightened animal look back at him, a prisoner in its own body. Then the door closed with a definitive boom, and the iron bolt was thrown. They stood in the forest, panting, the silence of the woods a stark contrast to the humming horror they had just escaped. The tunnel was sealed, but they all knew it was a temporary measure. "They're in there," Jenkins said, his voice shaking. "Those other guys. The ones who transmitted the warning. They're still in there. Trapped in that loop." Turner nodded grimly. The mission was no longer about their own survival. They had uncovered a secret that went beyond the war, a machine that could capture time itself, and they had left American soldiers inside its grip. The dog had led them to a secret Nazi tunnel, But the tunnel held a secret far darker than any Nazi. It held a cage for moments, a prison for time, and they had just locked the door, leaving the prisoners inside. June 6th, 1944. The iron door was shut. The forest was silent, but the hum was still there. Not in their ears, but in their bones. A deep, resonant vibration through the soles of their boots. Sergeant Turner looked at the sealed entrance, then at his men. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with a fear that went beyond combat. They had seen the impossible. Hollow soldiers, talking dogs, a machine that devoured time. "We can't leave them in there," Private Jenkins said, his voice barely a whisper. "Those other guys, our guys, they're not just in there," Corporal Dixon replied, staring at the ground. "They're in the loop. They're part of the pattern now, like those German uniforms." The psychological weight was immense. They had sealed their comrades in a tomb that was not a tomb, but a recording. A living, repeating moment of terror. The decision was made for them. From deep within the earth, a new sound emerged. A siren. It was not an alarm of intrusion. It was a steady, pulsing wail that spoke of a system reaching a critical state. The hum intensified, shifting in pitch, becoming a pained, metallic shriek. The ground beneath their feet trembled. Small rocks skittered down the camouflaged door. "It's overloading," Turner said. "Our presence. We disrupted it." The iron door began to glow, a faint cherry red at first, then brighter, hotter. The metal groaned, straining against its hinges and the massive bolt they had thrown. "Back! Get back!" Turner yelled. They scrambled away from the hillside, taking cover behind the thickest trees they could find. The siren's wail reached a fever pitch. The glowing door turned white-hot. Then, with a sound that was less an explosion and more a vast inward gasp, the door vanished. Not blown off its hinges, erased. The rocky outcrop around it shimmered, like a mirage on a hot road. For a single, horrifying second, Turner saw through the hill. He saw the tunnel within, the walls now transparent, and at the far end, the green glow of the machine flaring like a dying star. He saw the glowing dogs, frozen mid-snarl. He saw the empty uniforms of the German guards, and he saw the American paratroopers from the lost unit. They were not running. They were standing perfectly still, their faces locked in expressions of final, utter horror, their eyes glowing with the same sickly green as the machine. They were echoes now, too, preserved forever in their last terrible moment. The vision lasted only a heartbeat. Then the hill solidified. The siren stopped. The hum ceased. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum, the silence of a place where something had been, and was no more. Cautiously, they approached. Where the iron door had been was now only a seamless, scorched rock face. It was as if the tunnel had never existed. The Avalon machine had not exploded. It had collapsed. It had taken its captured moment with it, sealing itself and its victims in a tomb of solidified time. The mission was over. They had found the secret tunnel. They had discovered the fate of the missing unit, but they had no evidence, no bodies to recover, no machine to dismantle, only a story that no one would ever believe. As they turned to leave, a movement caught Turner's eye. From behind a tree, the German shepherd emerged. It was wounded again, its fur matted with blood, limping just as it had been when they first found it. The green light was gone from its eyes. It was just a dog, a scared, loyal animal that had been used as a pawn in a game it could never understand. It looked at Turner, whined softly, and then turned and disappeared into the forest. Sergeant Turner and his men made it back to Allied lines days later. Their report was filed and classified. The official record stated they had encountered a German patrol and suffered casualties. The story of the tunnel, the machine, and the echoes was buried, deemed too fantastical, too damaging to morale. But Turner never forgot the look in that dog's eyes. First, the intelligence and fear. Then, the alien green light. And finally, the simple, confused pain of a creature returned to itself. The dog had led them to a secret Nazi escape tunnel, but the real secret was what the Nazis and their Avalon partners had been trying to escape from. not the Allies, the relentless forward march of time itself, and in their desperation they had tried to build a door out of it. A door that had, in the end, become their tomb. June 7th, 1944. The forest was different now. The silence felt earned, purchased with a horror they could never describe. Sergeant Turner and his remaining men moved like ghosts through the French countryside. The image of their petrified comrades burned into their minds. They were heading for the rally point, for the semblance of normal war, but they knew nothing would be normal again. They found a deserted farmhouse to rest in, its inhabitants long fled. The men were quiet, cleaning their weapons, not meeting each other's eyes. The psychological shock of what they had witnessed was a shared, heavy burden. A soft scratching at the door made them all jump, rifles snapping up. It was the dog. The German shepherd stood there, its head low, its tail between its legs. The wound on its flank was fresh again, seeping blood. The intelligence in its eyes was back, but now it was layered with a deep, profound sorrow. It looked directly at Turner and whined, then turned and took a few steps away, looking back. "It wants us to follow again," Jenkins said, his voice hollow. "I'm not doing it." "It's not leading us to a tunnel this time," Dixon said, staring at the animal. "Look at it. It's pleading." Turner walked to the door. The dog didn't try to lead him into the deep woods. Instead, it limped toward a small, overgrown garden behind the farmhouse. It stopped at a dry stone well and began pawing at the ground beside it, whining with increased urgency. There was nothing there. Just dirt and weeds. "What is it, boy?" Turner asked, kneeling. The dog looked at him, then at the spot, then back at him. It let out a single sharp bark. Then it did something strange. It lay down on the spot, put its head on its paws, and closed its eyes. It was a posture of sleep, of death. Then it stood up, walked to Turner, and nudged his hand with its nose before turning and vanishing into the twilight for what he felt was the final time. The message was clear. Dig here. Using entrenching tools they dug. 3 feet down their shovels hit metal, a large metal case. It was not German, it was American. OSS issue. The lock was broken. Inside they found a disaster. A radio, smashed beyond repair. Code books, their pages burnt to brittle black flakes, and a journal. The cover was stained with what looked like dried blood. Turner opened it. The handwriting was frantic, desperate. Captain J. Miller, OSS Operation Watchtower. The asset Canis has been compromised. The Avalon Group doesn't just use animals as components. They use them as conduits. They can see through their eyes, hear through their ears. We thought we were using the dog to find their facility. They were using the dog to find us. Turner's blood ran cold. The dog. It had been a spy, a living, breathing surveillance device for the Avalon Group. Its initial lead to the tunnel hadn't been to help them. It had been to lead them to a place where they could be captured, studied, added to the pattern. They are not just preserving time. They are testing a weapon, an emotional resonance weapon. The machine in the tunnel, it was a prototype. It broadcasts fear. It amplifies the terror of its victims and uses that energy to power its own functions. The echoes are a battery, a perpetual motion machine of suffering. The unanswered mysteries began to resolve into a picture of monstrous clarity. The hollow soldiers, the talking dogs, it was all a system designed to harvest human terror. The ultimate renewable resource. They have a primary facility. A chateau. Code name. Liliac. The dog knows the way. But I cannot trust it now. I have to break the link. I have to... The journal entry ended in a long, jagged scrawl. The final page held a hand-drawn map, a route to a chateau deep in a secluded valley, and a single scrawled note. The source of the scent is not a flower. It is a poison, and it is blooming. Turner looked at his men. They had found the answer, but it was an answer that demanded a new, more dangerous question. The dog, Canis, had been a double agent. Its final act, leading them to this journal, was its rebellion, its attempt to break its programming. It had shown them the truth about itself to lead them to the greater truth. The tunnel had been a horror. but it was just a branch. The chateau, Liliac, was the root. Sergeant Turner was no longer just a lost paratrooper. He was the inheritor of a dead man's mission. He had a map. He had a name. And he had the ghost of a loyal dog, fighting its own private war against the masters who had turned it into a weapon. The mission was not over. It had just changed its shape. They were going to find the chateau. They were going to find the source of the scent, and they were going to burn it out.